What's up everyone, Scott the TroutHammer here, and we got another video today for the top 5 lure series on this channel. If you guys want to see the other videos in this channel, click this link that's going to be right here above my head. So as I've been doing with the videos for this series of top 5 lures, I'm trying to keep them as seasonal as possible. So right now, it is hot outside. It's going to be 100 degrees today, first 100 degree day we've had this year, and summer finally kicked over here in Oregon. That means bass are going to be in one of two places, super deep or super shallow. Super shallow is a great time to use these lures I'm going to talk about in this video. We're going to talk about my top 5 favorite topwater lures. But before we do, trying to get this channel to grow to 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to do that. So if you could, please hit that subscribe button down there, little notify bell up there, so you can be the first to see all the great content that's going to come from this channel. Yep, you saw me. There you go, guys. That's a fish. There you go, guys. That's unreal! Oh, this is such an awesome looking fish. Oh, yeah! Alright guys, check that out. So one thing about topwater, when you think topwater, you think of shallow, warm water. In the super hot times of the summer when the sun's just constantly beating up the water, a lot of times the shallow area is a place where more oxygen can get in the water because it's shallow. Any disturbance creates oxygen. That's what bass need. Also those super deep areas. But when you see like big shallow flats and you have calm water or disturbed water, we'll talk about the difference in this video. That's really a fun time to throw topwater. Me personally, I'm a topwater junkie. Nothing beats a big blow up on the surface from a lure. So let's get into it. So my number 5 topwater bass lure is a Z-Man Pop Shadz. So this thing is a soft plastic that you rig up weightless Texas style. This thing will float up to a 7/0 EWG hook, not kidding. But that lip has such a unique popping action, and the soft plastic allows you to skip so much better than a lot of other poppers, a lot of other plastics also. But something else this Pop Shadz does for you when you retrieve it, you can retrieve it subsurface and it sort of rolls underneath the surface. Right now it looks like a fluke, and when you pop it on the surface, it has that fluke style presentation where you just jerk, pause, get a big splash of water going towards you, raise a commotion. But also this thing will swim in this weird like tight rolling motion subsurface. That's another way to get bass to strike. Biggest thing about these Z-Man Pop Shadz, these things are indestructible. These things have so much longevity. I mean, I don't know if you guys can see the holes where I've actually used this thing. This single plastic has landed almost 30 fish, and it doesn't look like it looked like it's right out of the package. So like I said, where conditions matter for topwater, so this thing is a popper. So you want to fish this thing in really slick, glass calm water, shallow water. That's where poppers really thrive. And you can also pop and pause, and that'll help bring up bass from slightly deeper. So say you've got like 6 feet shallows, if bass are sitting, bellies in the mud, that popping action is a way to get them to come up from the bottom to strike this. My number 4 topwater bass lure really is a marvel of innovation. So glad this lure exists in my lifetime, the grass burner. Now I'm just showing you 2 different colors, just white and chartreuse and also bluegill pattern. They have so many different colors for these things. And they just recently came out with an XL model that's even bigger than that. I mean, this is already big, but you can catch big fish on that one. So a grass burner is just an inline buzz bait. So the presentation of a grass burner, a lot more streamlined. You can use it in a lot more areas than you could use a traditional buzz bait. But some of the best things about this thing, obviously the big profile, the big fish profile like that, but having that skirt with that gigantic treble hook in the back, and then a second smaller treble hook in the front, you get a lot more hookups on a lure like this, because a lot of times when they see those buzz baits, when they're imitating balls of bait fish that are just boiling and blowing up on the surface, a lot of times they short strike those because they're just trying to get 1 or 2 fish per strike and they're an easy meal. So that's why you miss a lot of fish on a buzz bait. You miss a lot less on a grass burner. But where I said this thing is really a marvel of innovation is this thing sits, so the fish profile is face down, and the way this blade works as you retrieve it, it sort of creates this vortex of air and this vortex of low pressure, so it actually glides over grass and over weeds that are on the surface. That's why they call this thing a grass burner. These things do sink, but they don't sink very fast. You can pop these things, let them sink just slightly, get those skirts to flare out, just drive bass nuts. I've been fishing this lure for years, haven't really fished it very much on the channel, but some of the fish I've caught on these things, like I average about a 3-pounder on a grass burner. So places grass burners excel are really, when it's sort of windy, you have a little bit of chop on the water, it's, not so much calm, not just like, white caps on the water. If you got a good breeze going on, if it's pretty windy, that's when a buzzbait's going to work, and that's when the grass burner seems to stand out amongst other buzz baits that I've used, the way this thing runs in windy conditions. My number 3 bass topwater bait is sort of the same thing as a grass burner, sort of the same category, but just gives you a lot more options in how you can work it, is a river to sea Whopper Plopper. So just 2 sizes here. This is the 110mm and the 99mm. They make up to 150mm size Whopper Ploppers. Those things are huge. So the best parts of the Whopper Plopper is you can run this thing so many different ways. You can treat this thing like a walking bait, you can treat it like a popper, you can treat it like a buzz bait. It gives you so many options. They float so well. They're a hard body bait, so they got those rattles in there. But that blade in the back makes such a unique splash and such a unique sound on the water. You know a Whopper Plopper when you hear it. Benefits also, just like with the grass burner, those gigantic treble hooks, 2 treble hooks on there, so your hookup ratio is a lot higher on this. But like I said, the ways you can run this thing, you can just straight retrieve this thing toward you, treat it like a buzz bait. You can actually walk these things, you can pop these things, just give them a pop, and that blade's going to kick water. It's sort of like a reverse popper because the pop comes from behind, the splash comes from behind it. And a lot of times that's something completely different that a bass hasn't seen. They're so used to seeing poppers where the splash comes in the front, something comes in the back. They think of something different. They got to go check it out. These things come in so many colors, so many presentations also. Probably the best 2 colors, if you ask me, are either the rainbow trout color or the loon color, which is black and has like yellow wings painted on it. Where the Whopper Plopper beats out the grass burner, there's just more ways you can use this thing, and there's more imitations you can create with the Whopper Plopper. But another thing the Whopper Plopper has over the grass burner in the buzzbait category is where buzzbaits work really well in windy conditions. This thing can work in any condition because you can treat it like a popper, you can treat it like a walking bait. Just any surface condition, any water condition, these things work. My number 2 topwater bass bait, and you're going to be surprised by the size of this thing, is a BBZ Rat. Is a big, gigantic wake bait. Look how huge that thing is. I mean, that's my forearm. The thing's as long as my forearm. Not too long ago, I got another one that's a fish profile. Does the exact same thing. It's a gigantic BBZ wake bait. The reason why I have this thing so high is because of the size of fish I've caught on a wake bait this big. My personal best came off this lure, was 7.5 pounds. But the average size of bass I've caught off a big wake bait like this is around 4 pounds. I mean, that's pretty big. But even a 2 pound, even a 1 pound bass is going to go after that. Obviously, best things about it is you got those gigantic oversized treble hooks, so you hit up those short strikes a lot better. And also the size and the shape of that lip just gives this thing such a wide, sweeping swimming action. It makes it look like this thing is frantic and trying to get away. That's something that just triggers big bass. They also put rattles in these things. So right now you're probably thinking, Scott, why are you displaying such a gigantic lure to me? So here's the thing, and I'm going to, again, I give credit where credit's due. I didn't come up with this terminology. Nick the Informative Fisherman, my Yoda, he came up with this terminology. Size of lure attracts a bigger fish. Say you're a gorilla like me. Say you're 6'3", 320 pounds, and you walk into a restaurant and you have one line that's only offering French fries and one line that's offering double bacon cheeseburgers. Big bass, big guy like me, they're not going to go for the French fry. They're going to go for the double bacon cheeseburger. Big lure attracts a bigger bite, bigger fish, and a lure this big, you're guaranteed to catch the biggest fish in your pond or lake. Primarily because only the biggest fish are going to go for things like this. And really got to think about it also, it's a game of calories. So smaller fish, they're going to go for lures like, this because it's a smaller bait, smaller food, smaller amount of calories. It's, it'll have enough to sustain them. Big fish need a lot of calories. So they're going to actually go for rats. They're going to go for gigantic creatures they see on the surface. Big fish, big mammals. I've seen ducks eaten off the surface. Full-size ducks, I'm not kidding. Bottom line is, if a bass can fit it in its mouth that's going to eat it, bass will eat things up to 50% their body mass. So, I mean, even a 2 pound fish, this is less than 50% its body mass. Yeah, this also may just be me, the area I live in, the kind of waters I have, but my hookup ratio, my cast to hookup ratio on this lure is unbelievable. It's almost 30%. The number of times I've cast this lure and hooked a fish on it. Times wake baits excel are those really windy conditions when you have somewhere between, just like chop, and white caps, because these things make a lot of commotion in those scenarios. You know, these things, you know, when I say windy conditions for like buzz baits, things like that, moving baits, that doesn't mean they don't work in calm conditions. That's just the time they excel. When water conditions are calm, you can use anything. The world's your oyster. But if you want something if you are in conditions where it's windy, there's a lot of surface disturbance, or you got some dirty water, you want something that makes more of a commotion on the surface. My number one bass topwater lure, really should be no surprise, is a frog. Topwater frog fishing, there's nothing like it. So just showing you two different presentations of frog. Got a popping frog and a walking frog. Both work, and we're going to talk about why. So here is a general rule I want you to understand with topwater fishing for bass. If nothing else is biting, pick up a frog. If you're getting bit on a frog, don't stop using the frog. So many bass, so many big bass eat frogs because frogs have a ton of calories in them. They're also an easy meal, especially if you run it in the way that it makes it look distressed, or it's just sitting there just completely oblivious to anything going on around it or underneath it. So the difference between the two frogs, the walking frog, the ones that have the pointed nose, these are the ones that are the more moving style frog. You want to keep these things going. So you just continually just like tap your rod tip toward you. You really don't need to like jerk, 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 jerk on a walking frog. You just need to tap it towards you and retrieve as you go. And depending on the build of the frog, so this one is is a Delta frog, and from California Classic. So this thing doesn't so much walk sideways as a normal walking bait would. This one sort of like pops up, 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 up like that. Give you an example, the Strike King KVD Sexy Frog. This thing has a lot slimmer profile, so when you walk this thing tends to walk side to side more than like the Delta Frog would. You know, you can still pause these things just fine, but when it comes to pausing, that's really when the popping frog shines. The popping frog moves completely different from the walking frog. The popping frog works like a popper. It's got that big lip in the front that's just going to chug water when you pop it, and that's where you want to like chug water, pause. Chug water, pause. Chug water, pause. Go through a cadence of that, like just sort of time your pauses based on how fast you see strikes. You know, give yourself anywhere from like, you know, 3 to 10-second pauses. It depends on the water you're in. So frog lures are completely weedless by design. They float, and the bass has to bite down to expose those hooks. So you see a lot of bass fishermen, they call this trick setting your hooks to kill. And all you do is you take a pair of needle nose pliers, you grab the hook, and you sort of bend your hook out and or up and out slightly. And I've already done it with this one, so I'm not going to bend it even more. I'm just trying to demonstrate. But that way, you can see, like, so, hang on. Here's a frog lure I found while fishing, and I haven't modified it yet, but you can see when I run my fingers on the hooks, I'm not getting hung up at all. So a fish has got to bite down pretty hard to get those hooks exposed. But on one like this that I have modified, I mean, yeah, my fingers are getting stuck. I mean, you guys probably can't see it too well, but I mean, my fingers are getting stuck on the hook. So a bass has to bite down nowhere near as hard to expose those hooks. So here's where the two differences between a walking frog and a popping frog really matter. If you have really, really glass calm conditions, popping frogs work better. If you have a little bit more wind, there's a lot of surface disturbance and dirtier water, moving frog, like a walking frog, tends to work better. Creates more of a commotion, draws the bass out. And I can't let this video go without saying this. It is the number one rule with topwater fishing. Floating line. You need line that floats. You want your bait to stay on the surface, so you need line that floats. So you want heavy braid, something that's like 40-pound braid or higher. You know, on one rod I actually fished with 65-pound braid. Or monofilament line. Monofilament floats better than copolymers and fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon doesn't float at all, which is why you need that monofilament line to stay on the surface. You do get a lot more stretch with the monofilament line. Sometimes it actually does help. Most of the time, I put my lures right onto the braid, especially because a lot of the places you're going to fish topwater, there's going to be structure right underneath you. There's going to be timber, fallen trees, limbs, anything like that, brush. So bass are going to try to wrap themselves around those things, so you need that heavy braid to keep the fish on, horse the fish out from that cover and not snap off. Another reason why topwater is so effective this time of year is this time of year when it's this hot, when there's this much daylight out, when the sun's just kicking the snot out of the water, and in some cases adding snot to the water, Waverly, the bass are feeding low light hours, so really early morning, really late night. They're already orientating themselves to the surface because other fish are already associating themselves to the surface. Bluegill, sunfish, you know, whatnot, your bait fish, they're going to be right at the surface eating bugs on the surface because it's easier for them to see, especially if there's moonlight. But that's where the bass are going to be, okay, my food's going to be up there. So that's when you bring something like, you know, rat, Whopper, Plopper, frog, something like that, that's when you bring that into their face and they go, oh, that's an easier, higher calorie meal. Down it goes. And also with that being said, with the low light conditions, moon phase does matter. So like right now here in Oregon, we've got a new moon, and the moon rise that doesn't happen until the daytime. So the nighttime fishing, there's no moon at all. There's no natural light for the fish. So that's where a lot of things like moving baits, things that make noise, are going to be a lot better than baits that you can pause on the surface. They will still work, but the moving baits tend to be a little bit more successful when there's no natural light. If you can make your own light, that's another story. That's why I bring a headlamp. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. Keep the conversation going. Tell me what your top 5 favorite topwater lures are. And if there's any that you think I missed, please add them in the comments below also. And of course, I'm trying to get this channel to grow to 1,000 subscribers. I need your help to do that. So if you could please hit that subscribe button down there, notify bell up there on your screen, so you're going to be the first to see all the great content that's going to come from this channel. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, tips up, tight lines, and have fun fishing.